Welcome to episode 205 of the weekly Shared Security Show. And joining me for our end of the year episode are the world famous co-hosts, Scott Wright and Kevin Johnson.
World famous.
Hey, folks.
That's right. World famous.
According to Tom, we are world famous. That's good enough for me.
Famous the same way that every single city has like world famous chicken wings or world famous waffles or like every place I've ever been, there's at least one restaurant that's like, here's our world famous Cobb salad.
Yeah, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but I know I go to different cities, on food tours, right? And every food tour doesn't matter where you are. They say we have the highest per capita number of restaurants of any city.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So yes, you are on the same level as Cobb salad.
There we go.
Nice.
Yes.
I'm not even sure what Cobb salad is. I don't know where that reference came from. Now that I've said it out loud, I don't know what it is.
It's a delicious salad. That's all we'll say.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right. So are we going to get this year over with or what, guys?
Yeah, about time, huh? Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, we do this every year where we talk about we do a year in review, and then we each kind of give our predictions. I say that in quotes, predictions for next year. And I did want to start by kind of recapping the last couple years.
All the mistakes is what you're saying?
Well, let's
contrast. Let's call them contrast.
Contrast. Okay.
Yes. So in 2019, it was kind of a big year of where we covered a lot of stories about how technology is improving. There was a lot of content about AI and machine learning that was just kind of getting to the forefront, right? And there were security and privacy issues with that. Kevin, you had covered a couple stories that year about stunt hacking, which is a favorite topic
of yours.
I
forgot about that term. I love that term.
Yes,
By the way, my predictions in 2019 were code for a pandemic will shut everything down in 2020.
Yeah, who knew?
That way, but code.
Right.
How he knew, I don't know. But
yeah, well, let's get to that. And the other fun topic was, we say things in InfoSec it's not really new. It's just kind of a little bit different, but it's the same old, right?
Yeah.
But predictions. So for 2020, we talked about, security will stop being a separate organization. I thought that was interesting. And in some cases, maybe that has come true, right? We've started to see that shift a bit. But I do want to say that no one on this show predicted the pandemic. So
I said I did. Remember?
Well, you just did. But...
It was code.
Code. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. It was base 64 encoded and then twisted.
Yes. So in 2020, obviously, we all know what happened that year. The pandemic. It was also the 10th anniversary of Secure Ideas.
Yes. That's crazy. Man.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it? And this was also the year that we saw a lot of organizations switch to remote work. Obviously, in our industry, working remote was kind of normal, but seeing large organizations move to remote work, that's a big shift.
Yeah.
And there's lots to cover around that. For 2021, we predicted more pandemic. Surprise!
We were right.
We were right. So was everyone else. We actually talked about there would be a lot more ransomware and data breaches related to ransomware. That actually came true.
We were right about something.
Year of ransomware.
I will say, as much as I like to say we were right, I will say that wasn't a real big.
Not a stretch. Not a stretch.
Yeah. Other things that
January will arrive.
There will be January.
And we will do our 150th show.
That's right. Yeah. That's a good point. But we also talked about more privacy issues related to remote work. Our own industry is the problem many times, right? We're always creating our own problems. We haven't really enabled IT to do their job, and I think this will continue, and it has. Right. We've seen this with vulnerabilities, Log4j, other things that are challenging for organizations to fix. And then, Scott, you actually talked about how we'll be moving to a hybrid workforce model this year. and not fully go back to the office. And I think we've really seen that happen this year.
I don't know how many customers I've heard talk about future of work initiatives. And I always sort of thought that was a generic thing, but it actually is, pretty well defined now.
Yep. The other thing that Kevin talked about was he said that nation state attacks will not stop because Biden is now in office. So, Kevin, you were right about that.
Now, I want to be very clear, because the way you just phrased that sounded like I said nation states won't stop because Biden will screw up and leave them out there. I believe that I was directly responding to, if I remember correctly, people saying that more nation states attacked us because of Trump. And I was saying that won't change because we have a new person in office. Because I've seen,
only gotten worse.
Living in Florida, I see way too many of the stickers on gas pumps that say, I did that with Biden for some reason, because people think the president sets the gas prices.
Yeah, and from a risk management point of view, it's pretty rare that you can do much to actually change the amount of or likelihood of threats, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
I want to be clear, because
Yes, absolutely. But no one on this show predicted the U.S. Capitol riot. So
I was going to say, did we? Did we predict? Well, I don't know if we want to go as far as saying treason, but I think I saw that quote from Tom on Twitter.
I'll say treason. Why would we not go so far as to say treason?
Because we don't like to be political on this show.
I don't think it's political to say that black holes that broke into a Capitol building would be classified as treason. And if you think that's political, take your head out of your
There's
rear.
Been no political discussions on this show this year.
I predict next year we'll have even more political discussions.
There is Kevin's first prediction for next year. There will be political discussions. So I think it was interesting to kind of reflect on that a bit, and maybe when we talk about the year in review here, I did pull out a couple of the main themes that we saw this year that maybe we can talk about. I think the first couple months of the year obviously were things around the U.S. Capitol riot. That was obviously huge news here in the U.S. and I think across the world. So we touched upon that. Some things related to that, I think there was a lot of discussion about misinformation. Do you remember Parler coming and going and now going? That was interesting. And then there's a lot of weaving in stories just related to the pandemic. There was vaccination passports, which really haven't taken off. I think some companies at the beginning of the year really tried to push that. And there's just been a lot of pushback, I think, from a privacy perspective across the world on that. Even though mandates and things like that have made where you have to kind of carry around a picture of your vaccination card. When we talked about that, of people faking those and selling them on eBay and all that crazy stuff. But there was a lot of breaches too. We had the Florida water supply hack. Remember that one?
Oh yeah. Several.
The exchange 0 days, exchange servers that were under attack. There was a lot of the FBI ironically had some weird, like they had the exchange server controversy, the email hack that we just talked about a couple weeks ago. And then the Colonial pipeline ransomware attack. That was huge news. Again, talking about how ransomware is just
same with the JB meat packing or whatever it was, right? So
the
and the candy.
The candy at Halloween. How dare they?
Gosh, that was terrible. And then
by the way, I realized after that show that the candy company that got hacked makes Boston baked beans.
Yes, they do.
Candy Boston baked beans. Mm-hmm. If I had realized that during the show, we would be hunting down a ransomware company. Don't mess with Boston baked beans.
Very serious. Very serious.
As long as they didn't touch our Mr. Big.
That's right. And how could we forget about the great Facebook outage?
Yes. Where were you?
On Twitter.
We will rebuild. That's right. And then we had the F-12 hacking in the Missouri governor. That was a great episode.
Oh yes.
Kevin, raised Kevin a little bit.
That very complex hack where they just revealed the developer tools to see what what data was there.
I hacked the security of his offices this morning. I unlocked the door and walked in, and with the key I have.
That's right. And how can we forget about the names of exploits and vulnerabilities like Squirrel Waffle? You can never forget
that's my favorite of all time, I think, that one.
Yeah. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's a good one.
It is good. It is good.
And then, of course, we're ending the year with TikTok. Are they listening to you? The answer is yes. And Log4j.
Log4j. There we go.
What a way to finish.
Okay, so very important, critical question. You both just said Log4j.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is what I've always said.
Yeah.
During this entire thing, it has come out, supposedly, and I want to see if anybody else has heard this, that the authors of the library actually refer to it as Log4j.
Never heard that.
I didn't forging something.
Well, I just assumed it was Log4Java, right?
That's what I've always assumed. Yeah. But supposedly, and I say supposedly, it's probably on the website, but I haven't looked, that they refer to it as Log4j.
Well, they should have spelt it differently then.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
And it's GIF, not GIF.
We're getting in that debate.
Oh,
yes. Wow. What does it mean to go off the grid? Well, for most of us that are constantly relying on our phones, tablets, and laptops, it means shutting them off and doing some other activity like enjoying nature or spending time with friends and family. Now, you're probably a lot like me and struggle with turning off or putting down that smartphone because we always feel the need to be constantly connected. Listen, it's hard to go off the grid, but the good news is that there are products that can help. So that's why I recommend using a silent Faraday Bag, which can instantly block all wireless signals, quickly taking you off the grid and giving you back control of your wireless devices. Check out their full product line at slnt.com, and because you listen to this podcast, make sure you use discount code SHAREDSECURITY at checkout to receive 10% off your order.
You want your organization to be secure and compliant and to have a healthy culture, but your employees' lack of awareness makes you vulnerable to data theft, fraud, and compliance penalties. It's frustrating that the boring static training content that's being used today has failed to improve employees' ability to defend against cyber attacks. At ClickArmor, we know that without using gamification, it's extremely hard to get staff to understand how to avoid threats. Our gamified simulations and challenges have provided a 50% average improvement in thousands of employees' ability to spot phishing threats. Go to clickarmor.ca/sharedsecurity to get your free gamified phishing assessment for up to 500 employees. You'll see quickly how gamified simulations can help your team be more resilient and compliant and help avoid costly ransomware and fraud incidents. Let ClickArmor help you go from being an underappreciated, stressed out fall guy to being an innovative leader who's the catalyst for greater productivity in your organization.
That was a great recap, Tom. I think takes me back a little.
Yes. So
the old days.
I know. So
May.
let's talk about next year.
Yeah.
Is there anything that comes to mind that we're going to see? I mean, is it safe to say we're going to see more pandemic? Like the pandemic's not going to end next year? Is that?
No, I would agree that it's safe to say that we will continue to build up and pay way more attention to pandemic stuff than.
Yeah.
And I said this a year ago. I said it again last week. I think that the biggest problem with how we talk about the pandemic, I want to be very clear, not the pandemic. The biggest problem with the pandemic is people die. That's a pretty bad thing.
Right.
I think the biggest problem with the way we talk about the pandemic is that we, the politicians, people, the news, keep talking about the pandemic as if we do this one thing, we will solve the problem. If we
kind of like security, right? Magic bullet.
Right. I think what we need to start doing, and I want to be very clear, I am not an anti-vaxxer nut job, and I recognize that the way I'm phrasing this may come across that way. I think what we need to do is start making it clear to people that COVID's not going to go away, that this is going to be the same as the flu, with regards to every year there's going to be a variant that we should get a booster shot for or a vaccination, just like we do for the flu. I'm not comparing the two. I'm not saying, oh, it's just as bad as the flu, like those idiots on social media do. But I'm saying that we have to stop thinking about this as, and I don't mean this rudely towards you, because I think your phrasing was fine, but I think we have to stop thinking about this as, will the pandemic keep going, and start talking about it as, are we still looking at this? And the answer is yes. COVID's not like, we're not going to wake up one morning and COVID is gone.
Yeah.
The vaccine, the boosters, everything else does not stop COVID from existing.
Yeah.
It just helps reduce the effect. Yeah, absolutely. The pandemic is going to be around.
I think we're going to have different, a whole different environment around pandemics and things like that, because, 100 years ago, people didn't travel as much, right? And so you could literally kind of wipe out an entire disease, but now people are traveling and communicating, the disease so often that there are so many mutations. I think it's just it's going to become the most, infectious and probably less of an impact, like any parasite, right? Only survives if it doesn't completely kill the host. So it's got to get to a level of equilibrium. And I think you're right, Kevin. I think it's going to be an ongoing thing that we just have to deal with.
Well, and I look at like Omicron, and I want to be very clear. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. I barely made it out of high school. But I think that what we're seeing right now is actually a good state from a perspective of, yes, it's highly contagious and that's bad. Yes, the people who are at risk, that's even worse. But it appears to have a much lower death rate than previous variants. Yeah. And that's good. Like that, I'm happy to see that. And I believe not that Omicron is just lesser. I think it's because we're seeing a better uptick in vaccination. We're seeing a better uptick in people reacting to it, right? I know a year ago, 2 years ago, if I woke up not feeling good, I kind of blew it off and went to work and you know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, I'm fine.
We're more sensitive to it. Yeah.
We're more sensitive to it. So we treat it faster. And I think that's good. And that's what I think we should be focusing on is the good things we're doing to help.
Yeah. It's funny just before at the beginning of the pandemic, I was thinking back to SARS and MERS, and I was thinking, well, it shouldn't be that bad because we are more sensitive to these things as a result of SARS. And I thought, the measures that we were taking at the airports and borders and, hygiene and stuff would actually really minimize what we were seeing, but it clearly didn't. But still, the same effect kind of pervades, right?
Yeah. So, I will say that I saw something on, I don't know if it was Twitter or Facebook, and it resonated quite a bit with me, is that the next zombie movie that comes out, if they don't have people running at the zombies to get bitten because it's a liberal hoax, the movie isn't realistic.
Yeah.
Because
all right.
Oh my gosh.
So how does that? So considering the pandemic is going to continue, we're going to be living our lives this way for the foreseeable future. How does that impact just cybersecurity and privacy? Like, what will we see because of that continuation?
I think two things that we're going to see grow. Neither of these are new, but one is we're going to see a better understanding and focus on the marketing term, perimeterless, zero trust, all that kind of stuff. Ignoring the marketing terms, that we're moving and have been moving more and more organizations to the idea that there isn't a office that people go to, and as such, understanding the security ramifications of half of my staff is nowhere even close to me. That's the one thing. The other thing I think that we're going to see a lot of questions about and up in the airness about, especially in the pen testing field, which is of interest to me, is how do you handle the security and privacy when you have commingled work and life?
Yeah.
To the level that you do when people are home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
We've always had some level of remote worker.
Yeah.
But when the majority of your staff is working at their home on their home wireless with their home internet connection, with their how do you handle the backups you used to do? How do you handle the vulnerability assessments? How do you not scan the wireless router the person is working through because it's not yours, right? And what do you do there? We've looked at it from a perspective of, okay, I'm doing a pen test. I'm focused on end users. In the past, we had to be careful that if we did a phishing attack that we wanted to laterally move, that we would have to check to see if they were coming in from the office. We had permission to attack. Now we're doing pen tests against organizations where nobody's in the office. Everybody's at home. Okay, how do you control your lateral movement? Now flip that around to HR and investigation, and how do you handle that? What do you do when your user is surfing porn? Okay, is it your user? Is it their family member across the same network? Is it right? Like,
I totally understand. I think that's a great sort of insight, and it actually aligns with what I was actually planning to say before we even came to air, and that was I think we're going to have to move to something, I don't know what you would call it, but I'm calling it right now an end user risk assessment, where we're not focusing on what is the data that we're trying to protect. It's really what is the end user's environment in terms of what they have, what could be attacking them, and what safeguards are there where the end user is. And so I think that there's going to have to be a move to get more people to understand how to do their own sort of personal risk assessment. That includes both work and personal, and the businesses have to include personal in the scope of those end user risk assessments.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like the attack surface continues to change, and we as security professionals, just thinking your comment, Kevin, about pen testing, we have definitely seen the shift towards more red teaming type of engagements, right, where we are focused more on the end user because they are remote, right? That's the new. If I can get on their system. It's not about breaching the perimeter, right? Like we used to. I mean, that's still an issue, but it's not like it was. I mean, it has changed significantly, I think.
Yep.
So anything else, guys, what about privacy? What are we going to see from a privacy perspective? It's funny. One thing I also noted that we talked about, I think every year was, will there be a federal privacy law, right? Because California keeps coming out with their own, but the rest of the United States remains, it's just non-existent. So I think that's a safe bet, right?
I think it's going to be very hard to get, any authority that, I guess I shouldn't say that because I know GDPR, and I know Kevin's thoughts on that from last week. But to get a coherent policy, for a population as large as the United States, I think is probably going to be challenging. So I think you'll still see states, sort of being in the leadership role for those, and in the more meaningful ones.
I will argue with you that I don't believe that it's because of the size of our population that it'll be complex. I think there are two things that will make a privacy law at the federal level complex. One, the United States has a long history of trying not to have the federal government do things, right or wrong, right? And two, and more relevant to this, what will prevent us from having a comprehensive privacy policy is the useless jackholes that we have in Congress today. For them to do a reasonable privacy policy across the federal space would require them to take their head from their rear ends and do something good. And they're not going to do that. They're going to focus on things like Section 230. They're going to focus on things like, how do I get elected next? We're going to see the same gamesmanship. And I mean, come on, not to be rude, but was it 2 weeks ago, the report came out where in 2012, there was a law passed to prevent Congress people from, trading on insider knowledge, and it's not enforced, it's not maintained. And when one of the main Congress people is asked, hey, what do you think about what's going on here? Their answer is, well, we should probably look into that. No, we shouldn't just look into it. We know it's happening, you jackhole.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
because a privacy law is meaningful, and nothing meaningful comes out of Congress in the last 2 decades.
So I think, we're saying similar things in terms of symptoms, but the causes could be different for sure. I had a couple of other thoughts, Tom, before we end, and I'd just like to get your thoughts on it. So one of the things I was thinking about that is likely to happen, whether it's in the next year, it could be happening fairly soon. And I think there will be a crisis around cyber insurance, because it is so expensive right now. The prices are going up, and certainly the incidents are going up, ransomware, and underwriters are not stupid. They're limiting their risks, right? They're putting sublimits for, you might think you have a $5 million policy, but it only covers $50,000 on a ransomware attack and doesn't actually pay the ransom, right? Pays for your remediation. So I think a lot of businesses that don't recognize that are actually going to get stuck, and they're going to kind of they're not willing to pay for cyber insurance yet, and they probably aren't going to get value out of it. So I think there will be some kind of a crisis at some point where it's just not sustainable. I'm not sure what will happen, but it just doesn't seem right, the direction we're going in right now.
I will tell you that we are seeing from our side with our cyber liability insurance is that we are seeing way more questions being asked about ransomware and endpoint protection. We're also seeing increases in rates and costs and things like that. I think that I would like to see, I agree with you, by the way. What I would like to see is for businesses and the public to realize that cyber liability insurance is a bandage after you got cut.
Yeah.
It doesn't prevent anything. It doesn't protect anything. It doesn't help you. And instead of doing the requirement, and either of you that have negotiated contracts will recognize, right, how often a company will say to you, okay, we require you to have $4 million of cyber liability insurance, or whatever the number is. And instead recognize that what they need to require of us is controls and protections, not something to sue later, right? And
good point.
I'd like to see that. I don't have high hopes it will happen.
Cool. I had one other thought. Did you have a thought on the insurance thing, Tom? Or
no? I agree with Kevin on that, though.
Yeah. Another thing, just for fun, to sort of take a prediction on technology, is vehicles getting hacked. I think we're going to see a lot more vehicles getting hacked in the news in the next year.
Yeah. I mean, we had the story this year about drones hacking Teslas. I thought
that's right. That was one of our stories. We'll see more of those.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right in terms of, the technology that we're putting into cars, and the move to electric. I think every manufacturer of cars in the world now has moved at least some of their production to electric. And I think there's been, like Chevy or whoever had said that by 2030, right, every car produced will be electric. So I think that's going to open up maybe new doors for, hacking the technology related to that, especially, location-based tracking and things like that, not bringing up the air tags, but
there could even be some malicious activity, right? Locking up a car, or taking it hostage, or whatever, right? That I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll make it a goal of Scott, you and I can hack Kevin's Tesla.
Yes.
And then that way,
I don't know. I got to find a drone first.
Somehow I feel like I became targeted. You can have the goal, and if you get into my Tesla, great. Let's be very clear. You want to hack my Tesla, it's very, 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 very easy. Fly down to Jacksonville, come to the office. Hey, Kevin, can I take a ride in your Tesla? And I'll be like, yes, sure. And you're in.
Sometimes you just have to ask. Social engineering.
You totally hack the Tesla.
That's right.
And my last prediction is that security awareness training is going to become a lot more gamified.
Wait, that's a totally unbiased.
Totally unbiased
prediction. I predict secure ideas will get more pen testing work. Oh man,
something we're going to be right at next year.
That's right.
What I would like to see is and this isn't a prediction because I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I'd like to see the security industry get better at understanding our place in the world. And I don't mean that as in like, well, we should be put down in our place. I mean it is, we need to recognize, and we've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll keep beating this drum. We need to recognize that security is not the be all end all.
Yep.
That our job is to help the business be better.
Yeah.
And we, to do that, we need to understand the business. We need to understand actual risk. And we've said it before, right? People are really bad at risk assessments, even the people who it's their job day in and day out. And there's an easy way to prove that. There's a Shark Week and not a Cow Week.
That's empirical evidence, but it's still good. Yeah.
How many people do you say, are you afraid of sharks? Yes. Where do you live? Ohio.
Yeah.
There are no sharks in Ohio that you should be worried about.
There's another way of saying what you said there, Kevin, about, security isn't the be all end all. I heard this great analogy, or it was a story actually 20, 30 years ago, about an air traffic controller talking to a pilot, right? And the story went that the pilot was asking for deviations in his route for various reasons, weather or whatever. And the air traffic controller was not addressing his requests acceptably, right? He was being unreasonable. And at some point, when it escalated to a certain point, the pilot said, "Am I up here because you're down there, or are you down there because I'm up here?"
I like it.
So, if the business is to fly, then the security guys should just be there to help them fly, right?
That's great.
I'd like to see us focus more on fixing than exploiting. I asked this recently and nobody had a good answer why we're okay with more and more organizations, government agencies issuing bug bounties for open source tools and libraries and things like that, but not issuing costs and finances to fix the things that are found, right? We'll reward somebody for finding the bug. And I'm not saying we shouldn't reward the person for finding the bug, but we throw enough bugs at an open source project without giving them any help to fix it.
We do.
It's a fundamental thing with the cost of security. It's just not well understood and not planned for, right?
Yeah, it's just messed up.
Well, I'm going out here on a limb here, but maybe next year will be the year of the blue team.
You know what?
Next year is
going to be the year of the Linux desktop. I think my prediction has a better chance of happening.
Yeah. Everyone will move to Linux. Problem solved. That's right.
That's an interesting thing, though. You mentioned the desktops, right? So will we see more thin clients, like where the desktop is actually at the server side? Does that help security, or should we be pushing for that?
I think the answer is yes, we will see more of that right off the bat. Talking about the privacy concerns of work from home, one of the ways those have been relieved, maybe, reduced, whatever the right word is by doing VDIs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. We'll see.
There's a prediction for you there, Tom.
All right. I'm noting it.
We're getting better. We should be getting better.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, this was fun.
And thanks to all the listeners for following us and commenting on our channels and posts and things.
Yeah, much appreciated. We'll definitely do a recap. I usually send out, if you haven't subscribed to our email list, I usually do like a top 10 episodes of the year, which is always fun to see what people, listen to the most. And we'll do the same thing for our YouTube videos. So check that out, and wish you guys a happy holidays. And then we will see everyone next year
in the new year,
2022. All right, all. Take care. That's all for this week's show. Visit our website, sharedsecurity.net, for all previous episodes and to sign up for our email newsletter. Looking for Shared Security merch? Be sure to check out our online store at store.sharedsecurity.net. Don't forget, you can always find us on Twitter at SharedSec, and please hit that like and subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.